a good time. Put a smile on your face, yeah. Kimmy Kim and Elation Radio. Even brighten your day and help you through the night. Bringing you good music. Kimmy Kim and Elation Radio. And here's your host, Kimmy Kim.
All righty. Hey, sick and tired of being sick and tired. I welcome everybody on this day, January the 22nd, 2021. Welcome back to Elation Radio, and this is Minister Sedric on Relentless Pursuit, because y'all know how we do. We are always looking for a way to serve God better and serve his people better. So we are relentless in that desire to accomplish God's goal for our lives. As I was preparing for the show tonight, I started thinking about Luke chapter 10, and I was reading verses 25 through 37, and I found that Jesus told a parable of the Good Samaritan in this. And it was a culture in which the Jews and the Samaritans hated each other, right? And in making a Samaritan a good person, right, right? Indeed, someone who loves a neighbor. Jesus went against hundreds of years of teaching, right? And he went against all traditions because there was a lesson to be taught here. And if you look down history, there are countless modern parables to the Jewish Samaritan. And whenever you look, I want you to think about this. Wherever people are divided by racial and ethnic barriers, right? Think about this. It's not the person from this radically different culture, right, on the whole other side of the world that's hardest to love. But I found in today's society, it is that neighbor, that person who lives right next door to you, whose skin color, whose language, whose traditions and rituals and their ancestral heritage, right? And all of their customs that are different from our own. Those are the ones who are hardest to love today, at least from my point of view. And so if you want, it's just one of those things that just sticks with me. And it's hard to love our neighbors, even though Jesus commanded us to do that. So I asked myself this question: how hard is it, Sedric, for you to love your neighbors, the people who live next door to you, the people all over the city, the people in this state, right? Even I have problems with people of different nationalities and colors. So I asked myself that question, and I thought about some different Bible passages. But the one that stuck with me was Luke 10, verses 25 through 37. So with that being said, I think we have a number of guests on tonight. I want to introduce everybody, if I would. I got my co-hosts. I got two of them on tonight. That's Terry Jones. Terry, you out here tonight? Okay, he might be still muted out on us. And I have Jason on with us tonight. If we can make sure they're unmuted, Kim. And then I also have a couple of guests, three guests that I'd like to introduce if they're on. That would be Pastor Philip Edge and his lovely wife, Mrs. Carrie Edge, and then also a good friend of mine, David Paul. So we have a few guests on tonight. We want to have a general conversation tonight. And I guess tonight, it's a continuation of a discussion that we were having on Monday night, and it was called Race, Black, and White. This has been a topic of interest for me and a topic of discussion for me basically throughout the year of 2021. And this all started because we have a good friend a gentleman who definitely was interested in the topic, and he had questions. And, it started out to be one of those conversations for me that I really didn't want to participate in. I was like, everybody talking about this. I mean, race is such a age-old problem. It's never going to change. That was my attitude. And in the discussions, the person who wound up being changed, I believe, the most in our group was myself. Yeah, myself. I realized that prejudice and racism, it exists, but it exists on all sides to a degree. But the real problem, and the problem I wanted to just talk about a little bit tonight, was really about racism. How do we see it as a people? Each of us has a differing view of it, and we respond to it differently. So that's kind of what we want to talk a little bit about tonight. I want to make sure that I got everything together here. Make sure everybody's unmuted. Sister Kim, you want to make sure that we're all unmuted?
Yeah, I got you, Sedric. How you doing this day?
Hey, brother Jason, how you doing? Hey, brother.
What's going on there, Minister Sedric? How you doing?
Doing good. How you doing there, brother? Everything going all right? You got the missus with you, or is it just you tonight?
I'm here, Sedric, of course. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
What's going on without you tonight? Brother David, are you out here with us tonight? I might be missing one, but Brother David, if you're on, just jump right in. Let me know you're here. Shoot me a text. But I kind of wanted to pick up where we left off last week. Or earlier part of this week, because it was such a wonderful topic, and it touched me deeply, right? And so I was left with that question, And one of the questions I was left with, and the reason why I chose the parable about the Good Samaritan, is that I have to ask myself, how hard is it for me to love my neighbor? How difficult is it? And that was a tough question. And so I would like to pose that question for either of you. And whatever your answer is, when I say how hard is it, I want you to kind of explain what you go through when you meet with this different person, this different type of person, whether it be culturally or whatever the position is in the company. Why do you feel the way you feel?
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Cedric.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll jump in. I think you bring up a very, very interesting question, and honestly, it's a deep question, especially when we're talking about racism and how we feel. Many times I think that we, especially as good Christian folks, we will make the blanket statement that we're not racist. We don't have a racist bone in our bodies. It's unchristlike to be racist. So we'll throw all of these statements out, and honestly, we don't know until we're really faced with certain things, right? How we're going to react and or respond. Honestly speaking, I think it's interesting because not only as a believer, but also someone who is in the diversity awareness field. I find myself there are certain things that just inside of me just make me feel a certain way. And it's weird because it's even deeper than racism sometimes, because it may not be a whole group of people. It may just be specific people that I just got problems with, right? The way they approach me, the way they talk to me, the way they respond to me, and something flares up on the inside of me, in which literally I got to check that, because I got to ask myself, what in the world is going on, and why is this person making me mad? I think the difference between quote unquote racism and just you got some people who get under your skin is the fact that when we talk about racism, we attribute those characteristics or that belief system to an entire group of people. And I'm just being honest, it's weird, it's crazy, especially, my wife and I, obviously we many people don't know, but we live in the South, where there are deep rooted belief systems. And there are people that, and they'll even say, well, you know what, it's just the way that I was raised. It's just the way that I was brought up. And, I know there are times, and I'll throw this out to the group and sit back so we can have conversation. But, there are times when I've seen people in which, they will literally throw it up to, it's just the way that I was raised. And I'm just being honest, that for me, that is extremely frustrating, because again, as a man of color, I'm looking and saying, so you're going to dismiss me because of the way that you were raised. You're going to dismiss not just me, just anybody who looks like me because of the way that you were raised. You don't even know me. You've never even met me, and you're going to dismiss me because of the way that you were raised. And that right there, I think that's something that we see a lot, especially here in the South. So I'll pause so we can have conversation.
Okay. I'm going to need you to guide that part of the convo, because, man, you said a lot. Go ahead.
You did really say a lot. Philip. I guess my thing is, what has it been like for you? I'm going to throw this in Carrie. What has it been like for you in a racially charged climate that we're in like right now? What has it been like for you and your family?
That's really interesting. I guess when our children returned back to school, we actually had an incident that we felt was very racially charged with an adult who actually happens to be a youth minister. He was very aggressive in his mannerisms and language towards a large group of African American students, some that went to the school our children attend, the high school, and some that went to a neighboring county's high school. And in this particular instance, tempers were flaring and that sort of thing. The kids felt immediately attacked. This gentleman was Caucasian, and the children felt attacked. And I think a lot of it had to do with the current climate, that there was a lot of tension. Mm-hmm. I think some of that tension has settled out just a little bit, but especially young people found themselves in a very tense situation. And then to make matters worse, there were a number of adults of various different colors of skin who walked by the children, but mostly Caucasian, and did not offer any help, did not offer anything to the children, but did check on the grown white man in the situation. And then additionally, on top of that, there was a staff person. I believe it was discovered that she was a staff member of the county school system that actually took her car and backed it in to block in the young person's vehicle, which in my mind could have absolutely escalated the situation. And all of this was over what the gentleman thought was a scratch on his new vehicle. And so it really escalated kind of out of control. And we asked the administration of the school for a face-to-face with this gentleman. And, of course, he had black children.
Yeah, he had black children.
That he had ministered to, that he had gone out of his way to pick up from, certain parts of town because they had a certain kind of lifestyle and their parents were absent, et cetera, et cetera. And so although we were able to have a conversation, we did not have an understanding. And to me, that ultimately is the problem. And that's the thing that I see over and over again. And the bottom line is we've made certain colors good, and we have made certain colors bad. And so we can't get beyond that. And so as a Caucasian person, for those of you that didn't know or perhaps could not tell by my voice. No, I'm just teasing you. We got to play, y'all. Humor's important. It's so important. That when we begin, when white people, I prefer to say that, I'm white. When white people begin to have conversations associated with color, we become very defensive because we have been taught that being racist or having any kind of bias at all is bad. And so instead of being able to, like Sedric opened the show, to just say, yeah, there is some bias, it's implicit, it operates through me because of things I've seen, things I've heard, the way I was raised, instead of just being real so that we can come to a place of understanding, we just conversate. And we just talk and dance all around the topic. And to be honest with you, that's exactly what the administration of the school did. There was no resolve. We offered, my middle daughter actually collected stories, narratives from friends at school who were brown skinned, who shared their experiences in the school of when they felt like they had been ridiculed because of the color of their skin, when they felt that racist acts had been carried out against them, how they felt about the Trump flag being flown on the back of vehicles in the parking lot, of, the rebel flag, et cetera. These were real stories from real kids who were willing to be brave enough to go beyond just the conversation to try to bring understanding. And there was never, that I know of, a set of eyes that cared to even look upon these stories and try to bring to them a sense of solace, peace, concern, reconciliation. So the children just went back in their shell and just said, you know what, I just have to endure this. And that's not right. And for me, as a mother of a white mother of brown-skinned children, and I shared this on a podcast that we did, the thing that I realized, I can give my children my DNA, I can give them my values, I can give them my heritage, I can give them my wealth, my legacy, but I can never, ever give them my white privilege, and I cannot protect them from people who choose to not understand, but to operate in their bias without understanding.
Wow. I can only say wow to that, but I want to go back because I don't want to miss your comment, Jason. You had a comment because I want to. I'm going to pose a question here in just a moment. Jason, did you have a comment?
Yeah. I mean, just going back to how you opened the show is how do we love our neighbors, and I think we've got to find a way to connect. And the story that opened up about how. When you talk to people, I live in Texas, so I'm from the deep South, and I've come across people who were raised to view me and people of color in a different way, and what they say is that's how I was raised, and I understand the frustration, but for me, I have to challenge myself and say, are there things that I was raised with that I find a hard time letting go of? And I don't do that to justify their thoughts or beliefs, but to try to connect with them, right? We speak about really understanding, and I think it has to go both ways, right? Everybody should understand the experience that I've had as a person of color in America. But I also got to understand, like, man, you were just raised this way, and I can understand the struggle of letting go of things that you were raised in, even when you find out they don't match. They're not good things. And really, I think to start, it does take real conversation, not just talking about it, but it takes connecting. And the thing I always challenge people on is we've got to connect as human beings, not black, not white, not a racist, but try to see that the hurt and pains that we all feel as human beings. I may not ever understand why you were raised a certain way and why you've chose to hold on to that, but I can understand what it feels like to have something that you were brought up to believe taken away from you, right? And just find ways to connect that goes beyond color, and when we connect, making sure that as we share our stories, it's a challenge, because I know when you start talking about race, the biggest challenge is people feel like you're pointing the finger at them. And you're saying, well, you're this and you're that. And that's a little bit of insecurity on one side. But then it's like, are we making sure that we're not blaming them, right? I was always taught that when you have communication, and you're especially having difficult conversation, you use I feel statements, because the I feel puts you at the center, and it helps alleviate any type of defensiveness, and I think it brings the level of humanity back out.
See, and I agree with that, but as Christians, and all of us here on this line, I know for a fact we are all Christians, and I guess my question would be, because we live in such a racially divided world, right? My question was, how do we view these issues, right? And then how do we deal with them? Because I know for me, when I think of racism, right, and when I think of dealing with other people of different ethnicities, and I sometimes get skin color, and actually I get like physical features all kind of tied in together. You know how they'll say, well, you got this black man nose, this big nose, right? Like all people got wide nose, black people have wide noses, kind of thing. But I find myself doing it. But when I meet someone who may be, or who I suspect, or who I've felt slighted, that they've slighted me, I ask myself, as a Christian man, and I'm going to ask everybody this question as well, should we even be concerned about these types of social issues? Should we really be concerned about it? If we're all Christian brothers and sisters, shouldn't we just love each other because we're Christian brothers and sisters, and because Jesus commanded us to love one another? Why is this such a big deal today as it has been for hundreds of years? Why is it such a big deal? How can we deal with it?
I have a bit of a theory about that, Cedric. You know, when you go back to the scripture that you brought up at first, in the last verse of that particular section, I think it's 37. It basically poses the question. In 36, you know, who was the good neighbor? And then if you go to Mark 12 and 31 says for us to love our neighbors as ourselves. The problem with society is that our love for ourselves is very superficial. So we love the things that are on the outside. We fixate on the things that are on the outside. This is what really has watered down Christianity. If you go back to the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he reminded us that we needed to get beyond of what was on the outside, but to judge a man by the caliber of his character. Character has become something that is not as important as your checkbook, as the house you live in, as the car that you drive in. And so we are a very fast food surface society, and it just continues to get worse. And this is why we haven't really properly dealt with the issue of racism, because it starts with you got to love, truly love. Love is unconditional. See, we made love this feel-good thing. We made this thing about, you know, hugging and touching and kissing and all of these sorts of sweet things. Again, those are very superficial because they deal with the flesh, but we have to deal with the heart issues. And those are the real issues that keep us from truly loving one another as we love ourselves. Because to be honest with you, we're not even really loving ourselves. And you just said it.
Tell us about it.
You know, one of our daughter has faced so many different issues because she is whiter than I am. She has blonde hair. It's less blonde now than it used to be when she was young, and blue eyes. And she would get lots of different comments from both sides, and still does as a 17-year-old. Now, she's come to a place to be strong within herself because she's had parents who have raised her up to be that way. But there were many times where she came home feeling defeated when black people called her, what are you, albino or something? These are grown people saying this to a child. So it's hard to love ourselves when everything wants to tear you down. And it's all about the outside and not the inside. Didn't even take time to really understand and know who my child is. How does it make me feel as a parent? I mean, they call me Mama Bear. No, it makes me upset.
Okay.
It makes me upset that people would judge my child just by looking at the things on the surface, and really not her heart or who she is as a person. And when, you know, the N-word was used on the bus by a white child, my child had never heard the word. So she played along because she had no idea what it meant. And then I think this was kindergarten, the teacher, Philip went to leave her. This is the same child who's really struggling with, now she's faced with race. She didn't know race before. She did not know it before. It didn't matter. What mattered to her was the caliber of someone's character and their heart, because that's how she was raised in our home. Now, when she went to school, there started to be a lot of judgments and biases, and I've got to fit in a category. So when her brown-skinned dad drops her off at school, and the white kids now are like, what the world? Like, is that your dad? And so they begin to use the N-word towards her father. And the teacher says to her, I kid you not, this is a person with a degree teaching our children in elementary school, and says, you don't have to cry because your dad is black. Now let's just marinate on that for a second. So these are the ignorant things that we are responsible for allowing to come out of our mouths. As a parent, I mean, obviously, it makes me extremely upset. But I think what makes me more upset, that truly those are opportunities for us to bring light and understanding. But the unfortunate part is we don't have ears that want to hear. We've become too content with our discomforts. or too content with our comforts to get into the place that are uncomfortable. Either way, so it just depends on what side of the spectrum you're on.
Absolutely. Since you bring up a very interesting point, but before I hit that, I want to ask Philip. Philip, how does that make you feel? I mean, really, how does that make you feel? And how does that make you feel towards the people who are saying it?
I mean, obviously infuriated, At first, honestly, when it happened, I did not know how to react, right? I'm sitting there looking at this saying, what do you mean? And I literally had to take a moment and process what just happened. And the more I processed, the more angry, I got. And obviously, we had to have a moment with the teacher, and we had to have a moment
and
with
the principal,
right, to really just have some conversation. But again, infuriated, is really how I felt, because again, this wasn't that long ago. You know what I mean? That these things were happening,
yeah.
and the amazing thing is they're still happening today in 2021.
Yeah, that's 12 years ago.
Yeah. So
I think, as a white person, it makes me angry. I mean, I need to be proud of my race too. Every person should find pride in their ethnicity, their heritage, their race, and then, learn to love and embrace everyone else's race as well, and, embrace those differences. I really believe that. It makes the world so much fuller. But it made me very angry at people that look like me. And it made it hard for me to see myself as a person that looks like me, because I don't want to be a source of pain or hurt for my children. I mean, obviously they look at me as their mom,
right?
But my skin color represented the enemy, kind of in that moment.
Right. In that moment, you were, wow. And I'm glad you guys are speaking from your point of view, because it's totally different from mine. But what I was talking about Christians is I have been disappointed, because as Christians, a lot of times we deal with it in the way that the adults that you've talked to have dealt with it. And I grew up in a predominantly black area in Dallas, Texas, right? I took Terry by, and he made fun that we have projects with. Our projects are gated communities in Dallas. I don't know where he got that.
They are.
He said our projects are gated communities. But I grew up seeing just the opposite. I grew up seeing black kids. I remember after the movie Roots came out. I'm showing my age, everybody. But I remember when that movie came out, it was the black kids. I had these two friends that happened to be white, and all the black kids were running around school beating up all the kids, all the white kids, right? And so it was my buddy and his sister, and he was like walking in front of me real slow. We were little kids. We were in elementary school, right? And he's looking at me like, "You gonna help me?" I'm like, "Man, it's like 30 of them. You better run." And I was telling his sister, "You better run, because I can't fight for y'all, right? Because I
can't save
right? Yeah, I can't. But what I didn't do when the black kids caught up to me, they wanted to beat me up because I was helping them, right? And the question I have is, it's like a lot of people do this, and this is my disappointment sometimes with us as Christians, that we pretend that there are absolutely no differences in us. We go, Carrie, I know you know the scripture, and Philip, I know everybody on the phone knows the scripture, Romans 10 and 12, where he says that there are no differences, but there are differences in us, and I think that in our communities we don't hold the different ethnicities to an equal value. But what are we to do as Christians? I mean, am I to? Because I'm gonna be honest, Pastor Ed, I don't know that I could have been that cool in that situation. I don't know I could have been. Maybe I would have. I don't know. But history says about me, it wouldn't have happened. We'd have been breaking down doors and tearing up some stuff. We've been rearranging some furniture, especially if they blew me off, right? No, that's what history says about me. Now I don't know. I'm just saying. But how are we to handle these situations? Because I don't know how to teach someone who doesn't want to learn, if you know what I mean. I don't know how
Let they that have ears hear.
Yep.
That's how you do it, Sedric. I mean, that's scriptural. I mean, not everybody's going to hear. And you know what? This is why we have, and I'm going to put it out there, this is why we have black church, and this is why we have white church, because there is not one Christianity. It's racially divided. Most places when people go to church on Sundays, they go to you go to a white church or you go to black church. Yep. And I'm just keeping it all the way real. I have been treated poorly when my husband and I have been asked to come and minister. And we show up at a black church, and I don't fit what the expectation was. I've had people snub their nose at me, look at me funny, all these sorts of things, and I know I can relate in certain ways, because I have felt what racism feels like, and I don't really think that as a white person I honestly have the right to say that, but I have felt what it feels like to be ridiculed because of the color of my skin. Yeah, I mean, we've become such a homogenous world that we want to erase white. We don't need to do that.
That's right.
And you know, we don't need to do that. But I could go really deep into that, but I'm gonna leave it sit right there.
Oh, okay. But can I say something though onto that? Because like I've never really been called a racist, right? But I tell people all the time, I can identify with different colors of people, so I can identify with different races. You can call me a racist, but I don't mean it in a negative way. I think that's what makes our world better, is that we are different.
Yeah.
You know, I think that if we stop thinking you're different, like you said before, Carrie, you alluded to the fact that we've made color good or bad. What if color is just that? It's just color. It's just the way that light reflects off of an object, right? Why is it so bad to say color? Because here's my question, and one of you Bible scholars out there can answer this. Was there racism during the time that the Bible was written? Or better than that, was there racism long before the Bible was written in itself? When Jesus was here, before Jesus came, was there racism? Did people get discriminated against because of where they were from, because of what they looked like?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes.
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 And my mom
simple
taught
answer.
me. Yeah,
so
simple
wait a
answer
second.
is
I got a
yes.
question.
Go ahead.
I learned that race is a social construct. And was there mistreatment of people based on certain categories? Yes. But I didn't think it was tied to what we consider race and how we define race today. It was tied more to, where you're from, what God you
regions,
worship.
right?
Your regional type things, So when we say racism, I mean, like I said, I truly describe the fact that race is a social construct. Because if you take any human being and you look at them from a strictly scientific, biological perspective, there's really very, very little variation. Excuse me. So with that being said, racism is since race is a social construct, the institutional racism is a social construct, and I don't. You asked the question, what do we have to do as Christians? And I think we have to do what God does. He sees us not for the color of our skins, but like we alluded to earlier, about the character of our heart. And if we stop, and you have to go both ways. What I'm saying is this. I can't look at a person and see, okay, well, that's a white supremacist or whatever on the outside. I got to look to the heart and who this person really is. Because if I don't want to be judged by my outwardly appearance, I can't judge somebody by their outward appearance, no matter what it may say. I may, when you and I had this conversation, right? You see a man, bald head with a swastika on the side, what do you see, right? I see a child of God. Now, he's made a decision of how he wants to present himself, but if I really truly want to be looked at for who I am as a character, I got to model that behavior going outwardly. So,
and that's fine. I was, I'm gonna be honest. I would say this, like I said to you before on that one, Jason. If I see you bald-headed, shaved head with some steel-toe boots on, and you're wearing some jeans, and you got swastikas tattooed all over you, you're gonna have to give me an opportunity to get to know your character, because everything you just showed me, If you tell me you're a dog, I'm going to treat you like a dog. In other words, I'm going to stay away from you. I'll give you your right away, but I'm not going to go out of my way to spend time with you. How about that? I'm not saying it's biblical. I'm saying
so the question is,
I'm going to protect myself first until you show me something different.
As Christians,
is
that how we're supposed to operate? Is that how we're supposed to operate? Right? Because we all know what we have on the outside, right? We all know what the choices and decisions we made as human beings. And that particular gentleman, in the example, he's made a decision to present himself, and maybe even subscribe to an ideology that completely, totally goes against me. But as a Christian, am I supposed to see him from on the outside, or am I supposed to see him as God sees him, as someone who has a heart that God created very special, but has made some really bad choices in their life?
Okay,
that's the question I always ask.
I'll give you my take, and then I'll leave it for other people to jump in. My take is this, and I'm just going to be honest with you. I am going to see you for what you presented in front of me. I will be very courteous to you. That's something you won't have to worry about. I'll be courteous, but unless I feel like this is a safe zone, I'm not gonna go in there. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not going in. I'll speak to you. I'll say hello, but I will definitely, for my own self-preservation, I would definitely keep you at arm's reach until you give me a reason not to. I'm just being honest. I don't know no other way to approach that. If somebody else. No,
I mean it's an honest answer. But here's the reality. The honest answer is, how many people, Caucasian people, do the same thing to black folks? I'm gonna be courteous. I'm gonna be kind, but I'm gonna keep you at arm's length until you give me a reason to say that you're safe. So I mean, this is what I'm talking about. The attitude and approach that we take. If we're really truly trying to overcome this, we all have to be honest with ourselves about what we're dealing with. And I think that the real answer to go full circle, how do we do this? We see a person for the character of their heart and nothing more. We see a person as God.
But you don't know their heart until you interact with them.
Right, and that's when that is where we have to start.
And even then, you don't know their intentions. I'm just saying, you be wise as serpents, gentle as doves. I mean, I'm all with it, but that's just me. So nobody else wanted to delve into that. I know we kind of took a softer approach to that.
Well, Cedric, I would just say, I do agree with what you're saying. And I believe it's Jason. Am I correct in that, Jason?
Yes, sir.
I hear and understand what Jason is saying as well. I really think, just listening to both of you, it's both and. Because, again, as a Christian, yes, we are supposed to, engage people, talk to people, love people. Yes, that is all true, right? But there has to be an engaging that happens. There has to be some kind of communication that happens. And honestly, again, even if it's the person, and I'll use the context that we're talking about, the bald head, Caucasian guy with the swastikas, and the boots, and, just what the picture, right? So even if it's that person and I'm engaging that person, I have to give that individual an opportunity. Now, here's the thing. If we get to a place where we cannot agree, again, I may have to shake the dust from off myself and keep on going because we can't agree. Amos 3:3 says, "How can two walk together unless they agree?" Right. So if we can't agree, then some place we have to agree to disagree and kind of keep it moving, right?
And I think just Paul wasn't sent to the Jews. He was a Jew.
Right,
he was a Jew of the Jews, right? But he was sent to the Gentiles.
Right. Gentiles.
So we have to understand that God has a specific call for all of us. So where Jason may feel that he's been called to intersect that and to interject himself in courageous conversations, to tear down racial barriers with people who look like they might be third right or whatever, you may not be called to that, Sedric. And again, it goes back to us knowing ourselves. All of us are in a different place in our spiritual growth with God, and we all have been given different types of gifts to use. So it means that you be consistent in your character and your values as a Christian person, but does that mean that you inject yourself in some place that you know that you potentially are going to fail?
Man, say that again. See that? Yes. Go
does
ahead,
it mean that we
yes.
set ourselves up for failure, or does it mean that we activate ourselves where God wants us to be activated? It's not for everybody. Everybody couldn't do what Martin Luther King Jr. did. You know, and I know Malcolm X was a Muslim, but he took a different stance on the same issue. So we all have different stances and different looks and opinions about one specific issue. But we've all been called by God to handle that in a certain way. But do we put ourselves in a place that God has not called us to be? You know, Paul had to be sent back for the glory of God to save the same people he was murdering, because that would get God the ultimate glory. But that was for him. It wasn't for another apostle. Somebody else couldn't have done that to the caliber that he was able to do that. So I think we have to keep that in mind. There's a lane that you're supposed to drive in. And sometimes we have to stay in that lane to get to where we're supposed to go. That may not be my exit. That's all I'm going to say. But that doesn't make you a bad Christian. As long as you are in constant growth on the inside, your spirit man, you're always evaluating it. You're willing to have these conversations. You're willing to be truthful and open yourself up and say, I'm not quite there yet. As long as you're there, I don't think that there's an issue with that. But if you don't have a willingness to constantly be examining the inner man, I think that's where you're failing. There's a difference between inner ministry and outer ministry. I just believe that.
Amen. Yeah, Carrie, I totally agree with you. Carrie, I agree with you on that, because in my discussions with, we've been having meetings with other men of different races and whatnot for the past year and a half, and there's one that we brought into a conversation about, I want to say about 4 or 5 months ago, and he just basically admitted, hey, you know something, I'm not there. You know, it started because I had seen something that he had posted. He owns a very big company here in Louisville, and he put a big old sign that says, I support Trump. And I said something, and he took offense to what I said, and he wanted to meet. And I said, I have no problem with that. Let's meet. So we met. And I said, do you understand what, when you support that, what that sends, that message that sends to me as a black male? When you support someone who supports the Proud Boys, who supports white supremacy and these different things, he said, well, I'm not supporting him because of that. I'm supporting him because he's a Republican. I said, but understand, look at what you all are pushing. Message that sends to me as a black male. And so we had these lengthy conversations, and Sedric was brought in on that conversation. And one of the things that I learned is that, you know something, like you said, people are not there yet. Some people, they're willing to sit down and talk, but they're not where we would love for them to be at the moment.
Right.
Does that make sense?
And I think absolutely.
But if they're willing to come to the table, I think that's a great start. And
that's the biggest part of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get them to come to the table, and then as long as they're willing to come to the table, that means that there's a willingness or an openness to learn, and to understand some things differently.
See, you know, it's funny. I keep getting stuck since I started with the Samaritans, but I keep getting stuck because I think in order to get, I'm stuck with Dr. Martin Luther King in my head right now. Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate that. But I think
no problem.
I think, I want to be honest, I think that I'm not capable of loving like that. And since I know this, I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I got to exhibit that type of love. Let me say it like this. I don't trust myself. And I struggle with, when it comes to dealing with people who I know are racist in their way, or just maybe they're not racist, maybe they're just biased. Maybe they don't mind having friends of different races and color, until they move next door to them. Then they got a problem with them, right? I'm okay with you as long as you don't live in my personal space. And the problem I have is I often, and I will say this, there are some people that I've heard about, met, followed, read things that they've said, seen them, been in their presence, and I have no good thought about that person. Carrie, like you said, that's not my space. I have to go home and pray. I have to ask for forgiveness because there are thoughts that go through my head that I will not say out loud because I think as long as I don't say them, I'm halfway safe, right? But I have to go home and I actually have to pray because of the thought I have.
You're going to make it one more day.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
But I get it.
You don't have to get the bail money just yet. Hold on.
but
Especially when they
Sedric,
take it down, I'm not going to have no bail. Believe that.
the thing that I was just going to say this. The thing that's amazing, though, about what you're saying, though, is you're consciously aware of where you are, right? And I think that makes a huge difference. Someone who is conscious of, hey, I ain't there yet, but I'm still working, versus someone who is, has this glaze over their mind and their life to say, no, I'm good. I don't have a problem. Everything is all right, right? That's two different things. Because again, if you're willing to work, if you know, like, you know what, I'm not there yet. Hey, that we can work. You know what I mean? We can walk together. I said this the other, on Monday. We don't have to see eye to eye to walk hand in hand. But if we have an understanding, and I know where you are, you know where I am. Hey, we can work and we can grow together.
And Cedric, let me give you a scripture to hang on to help you with this.
All right, go ahead.
God already has this worked out. It says in Mark 4:25, and it's amplified. It says, "For whoever has a teachable heart, to him more understanding will be given, and whoever does not have a yearning for the truth, even what he has will be taken away from him." You don't have to take anything from him. You don't have to do anything from those that don't have a yearning for the truth, that are content to stay trapped in their bias and the deception of the enemy, because that's all that racism is. It's deception, okay?
Yes.
You don't have to worry about that. All you have to do is keep being that teachable heart and seeking other people who have the teachable heart. And understanding even the more will be added to that. So, man, just hang on to Mark 4:25, like Philip says. Dust your shoes and keep moving.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because, see, I always think of 12:31 what you were talking about earlier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You should love your neighbor as yourself. There's no other commandment greater than this. You know what I mean? And so I try to love people that way, but I got to be honest, like you said, Carrie, one of the things that we have a problem with in our country right now is we're not being totally honest with one another. I have, and I will tell you, I served in 2nd Cav during the Gulf War, and I will tell you that there were some guys who wore the same insignia that I wore, and they were openly racist. They had their own little section. When we went back to the Port of Jubail back in Saudi Arabia, when we went back to the port, there was a Marine Corps base that they had there, and they would be in their little corner, and it wasn't no 10, 20 of them, okay? It was way more than that, and we would have our section. But yet we were wearing the same uniform. We were in the same unit, and when the bullets started going down range, those are the guys on my left flank or my right flank. Thank God I didn't know which flank they were on. God, what an accident shot at them probably. I don't know, but we still had to fight the same battle. Wasn't that crazy?
Absolutely. I look at Jesus in his times, and I look at how he didn't fight with those that didn't agree. He gave them an opportunity to come into an understanding of the truth, but he loved them enough that if they wanted to stay there, he wasn't going to create an argument. And I think sometimes that is loving our neighbor. Why continue a conflict that's going to take people, like you have discussed a number of times here. There's certain conflicts that are going to bring you to a place inside of yourself that you're going to come out of your character.
Absolutely.
I give them enough truth, and I love them to give them the truth, and then my work is done, and I keep it moving.
Yes. And you keep it pushing, right? And that's the beautiful thing. So I know we're about to get ready to come to an end here. We still got a few more minutes if we need it. So if anybody has anything they want to bring up, feel free. But I have a question for us. Racism does exist. It's here. It's been here. It's probably going to remain here till after we leave. Now, I'm going to pray that we can get beyond it in my lifetime. I'm 50 years old today, so y'all know my days are limited. If I live to be 100, my life is halfway over. Oh, belated birthday. I've already.
Okay.
I'm going to not get proud and get happy. But as Christians today, as brothers and sisters, what are some of the steps we can take just on our microcosmic level, where we are right now in our society? What are some of the steps that we can take to get rid of racism in this world as we know it? And Jason, I get it. Racism is a social construct. I get it. But what can we do? What steps can we take to make this world a better land? I know we got to make this. Oh, I'm sorry. That was a Heavy D song back in the 90s. Sorry. My bad. I go there sometimes. But just jump right in. I give everybody a chance to kind of, give us a little bit of wisdom. Carrie, you've given out nugget after nugget after nugget, so I would appreciate it if you go next to the last, because I want y'all to know I'm last since I'm hosting. I'm going to be very last, so I might steal some of all what y'all saying and put it in one sentence and make myself look good. I just want y'all to know. No, I'm joking. But what are some of the steps we can take to even with our kids to help them? Because, you know what, I'm going to go first.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the step that my wife and I took when I was married and we had our kids is the first thing we did was we taught them who they were, okay, how they became who they are. We taught them about their parents, herself and I, and we taught them about the grandparents, and then we taught them about their ancestry. And in doing that, what we hope to achieve is they didn't look in the mirror and say, I'm a color, but we had hoped to achieve the goal that you are a person and you are valuable no matter what. And you're going to hear some harsh things in life, but you are not to believe in that. And we would actively have our kids come home and tell us about their day in school, deliberately trying to understand if racism was a problem in their school or if there was any sort of bias towards them. And so we taught them who they were and how they became who they are. And I can tell you, my kids, I know my son, he's 23 years old now, and when he dates a young lady, he never describes her he never brings up color. I have to wait till I meet him, or I always have him send me a picture. None of my kids ever tell me, they've never told me the color of the boys they like or girls that they like. So I tried to raise them not in a colorblind world, but in a world where they didn't focus so much on color as they did everything else. So that was my contribution to this world and trying to rid this world of racism. Started one child at a time in my house. Anybody else want to go?
I'll just say this just very simply, continue to have those conversations and open dialogue with people. Just real quick story. I had a gentleman not too long ago who, similar to you and Terry, expressed some beliefs that I kind of was taken aback by. And literally I was furious, but I reached out to him. And when I reached out to him, I said, hey, can we have a conversation? Which, honestly, that was hard to do, buddy. But he said yes. And we talked for about an hour. And I was able to hear and understand to the best of my ability really where he was coming from. And the interesting thing is he was able to hear and understand where I was coming from also. Now here's the amazing thing. Even with everything that he said, he believed in his mind that he was a believer in Christ. And with everything that I know, I believe that I'm a believer in Christ. So here's the crazy thing. Although we didn't necessarily get to a point where we agreed on everything, we got to the place in which we said, you know what? you're a believer and I'm a believer, and I love you and you love me, and let's build from there. So I just say, let's continue to have the conversations, courageous conversations, not be afraid of the conversations, and come to the table and find that lowest common denominator, and then grow and build from there.
Wow. Okay. All right. Jason?
I mean, I think it's simple when we kind of talk to it. I mean, I think any change always starts with the individual and knowing yourself, knowing your heart, and making sure you just align that. And that's what I've always taught my children. It's like, hey, you just got to know yourself and your heart, and making sure you're aligning your heart with the principle that you believe in. And I've always taught them, you align your heart with what God says to do. But I think it starts with the individual. Racism is not, conversations have to happen, but before I can be truthful and honest in my conversations with others, I've got to search my own heart and be truthful and honest with myself.
All right, I buy that for $1.30. Pastor Terry?
I think one of the things that was said.
Oh, Pastor Terry,
Sorry,
not Pastor Carey.
No,
we wrong.
No, go ahead. No,
go ahead, Carrie.
No, go Pastor
Yeah,
Terry.
I got you to close out. Go ahead, T. I'm sorry, Dub. Y'all go, T. Dub. I got the J Dub and the T Dub.
I have to agree with everybody that what everybody has said. One of the things, though, is one of the best things I've learned with dealing with the race now is to be able to listen. And really listen, open yourself up and listen, and hear from other people's stories and where they come from, and really examine yourself for any type of implicit bias that we may have. Because even though I'm black, I still have bias. They have bias, and I think a lot of times people have lived in their construct so long that they don't even think that they may have a bias. And so it's really I think it's really important that we listen. And then we begin to start tackling that and really helping people to begin to say, you know something, I do have a bias. And I really didn't know it. I didn't think about it, and how it came about. And because a lot of the things that are people that they have developed their biases on is based upon what they've seen on TV. It's not just because of personal interactions. It's because of what they've seen on TV, how they've seen black women per se, how they've seen black women and men portrayed, and how they've seen white women and white men portrayed on television is what people believe. If they see it long enough, that becomes their reality.
Amen. Amen. Because I can tell you, I know a number of people from foreign countries, even I know people who are from Mexico. They've never been to the United States. They have a perception of the way blacks are portrayed on TV, which causes them to be prejudicial in the way that they view blacks. I know some people who are from Somalia who are darker than I could ever be, feel the exact same way. Why? Because of the images and the things that they've seen on TV. That is funny. But anyway, I'm sorry. You go ahead, and then I'm going to close this out with one last statement before we go for the week. This is Carrie. You go right ahead.
Yes. Just real simple, and I shared this on Monday, but we have to be willing to put ourselves in uncomfortable places and have well encounters like Jesus did with the woman at the well. And he went right in for it, and the first thing he asked her was for something she could give to him. And I think we have to put ourselves in uncomfortable places to receive something from someone who is very different from us, and be willing to have, like we've discussed here, those courageous conversations. So sit yourself at the feet of someone who is much different from you with the intention of being teachable and understanding from their perspective.
Amen. That's good. So, I'm going to close out with everybody, and I just want to say this. I think that what we were talking about tonight, I think is a really good topic. So it's a starter conversation, but I have no doubt that each of us is applying this today. But I want to say this, that for what we're talking about tonight, I think that I challenge everybody. I generally will give out a challenge. I challenge you to find someone and befriend that someone who's of a different culture, a different race, a different mindset. Because I believe that it's the gospel that teaches us this, right? And I think that by the grace of God, that we can still work today, that we can overcome all the prejudicial pride in all of our lives. We can overcome everything that affects our families and our churches, right? Because I believe that that's how Jesus laid this out for us, right? God's wisdom is so much more greater than the wisdom that we ourselves have. So what we have to do, though, is we have to pick up our cross, and we have to labor in this. And we've got to labor to respect one another and love one another the way we love ourselves. So we can change our communities from the inside out. Like Jason said, it starts with the individual, and like all of us have said, you know, it takes tolerance. And I believe that that's one of Jesus' underlying messages, is tolerance. And so we love one another, and we grow to love one another, okay? So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close out the show tonight. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming on. I know I didn't do a good job. Of introducing everybody. So, but the next time I want to have you on again, hopefully we'll have a show that's different than race. We'll be talking about something on the other side of race, what changes we've made, what changes we've done. But I want to thank you again for coming out. So at this time, y'all know how we said, man, you find something you love, you pursue it, you embrace it, and you chase it, and that is your relentless pursuit. Thank y'all very much this evening. This is Mr. Sedric signing off of Elation Radio. Y'all have a good night and enjoy your weekend. God bless you all.